and welcome along to another episode of our Stadium Review series, Review the 92. For those who haven't seen it before, each week myself and co-host Tom talk about a ground in the English football pyramid that we visited, talk about our experience, rank it on key areas, and tell you whether you should be going or not, essentially. So after last week, where we were quite close to home, or at least our previous home in your case, we're now back up north again, going to Rochdale and Spotland. So if you're looking forward to this one, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below for one every single week as we move to Rochdale. And I hate to say this early on, I don't know that this is going to be the most positive, I'm afraid. Certainly not from my point of view, as much as I like Rochdale as a club. So we'll start, as always, with all of the stats before I get Tom's opinion on the day. So Spotland Stadium, now known as the Crown Oil Arena for sponsorship reasons, was opened in 1878, which I believe is the oldest we've had so far. I know. It's got a capacity of 10,249, and it had a record attendance of 24,231 for an FA Cup tie in 1949. But it has got one other little unique stat that Tom will like, and this is quite bewildering to me. The Rugby League World Cup in 2013, Spotland was selected as a venue and hosted the match between Fiji and Ireland, which is the first time they'd staged an event in Rochdale for a World Cup in any sport, and it was sold out with almost 9,000 people.
Oh, good for them.
Absolutely.
I like that.
It's a nice little stat to finish on, but I want to start initially, before we get into the key areas, with your thoughts on the day and the occasion.
Yeah, so half an hour ago you sent me the text, are you ready to do the podcast for Rochdale? And I was just racking my brains thinking, it's not even that long ago, it was only a couple of years, but
November 2018.
It's not even 2 years, but I put it down as one of the easily forgettable match day experiences, which sounds quite mean. I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's just the way it was, I'm afraid. Nothing distinct springs to mind, yeah.
You've been sort of very clear early in this series about the two things that cloud our judgment a lot, which we've talked about. The first of which being the weather, which it was a cold, wintry day. And the second of which is the actual game itself. And it is one of the worst 0-0s I've watched. So we'll get to Wigan in a few weeks, which is probably the worst game we've seen this season. I think Rochdale was probably the worst I saw last season, from my memory off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think Wigan, we'll look back, hopefully when everything's better, and we'll be like, that was the last game we went to before the whole country shut down.
Yeah.
Other than that, that will be even more forgettable. They were dull games. And I think I just mentioned before we went on recording that our keeper, Luton's keeper, had a really good game, pulled off some fine saves. And that's the only thing I can remember. So it's going to be a struggle rating it on four different aspects. But here we go.
I guess the thing for me is it's very hard to be fair when you've watched a game like that at a ground, because it does cloud judgment. The same as the Norwich one. It was impossible for me to give it a low score, even if there were things I don't like, because that match I will always remember positively. And that's something we have to bear in mind here. There will be people who have seen 4-all thrillers or whatever who will say, actually, it's a lovely little ground. And it wasn't bad. But there are a lot of negatives for me. So I always moan about walks, and that is going to be horrendous here, because it is the worst of any in the series so far, I believe. It didn't really have a lot going on. It wasn't in the town centre, in the thick of things. It was walking out to the middle of nowhere, which we've mentioned probably only with Cambridge prior to this one.
And Cambridge got a hard time from us. So.
And then it was an absolute stinker of a game. I mean, how can you be positive about it? So I think we should just go straight on to atmosphere. And this is where it's quite hard for me, because how can fans be excited watching that game of football? From what I remember, the Rochdale fans weren't too bad, actually. It's just because it was nowhere near full. It wasn't great.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got an image. I think we were sat along one of the longer stands, and opposite the other big stand was almost empty.
So there was only 3,500 people there, and about 1,000 of those were from Luton.
So low attendance. I don't know what the teams were playing for that season. A lot of Luton, obviously.
Well, that was
going up.
Yeah, the season we got up. It was early on.
But I don't know if Rochdale had started off well or badly, whatever. But low attendance.
Yeah.
A drab, dull, cold, wintry day. It's not the best combination. No. And like you say, if we are being strict, I guess we should say we're just trying to rate the grounds on individual merit, but we don't go to the ground to do a stadium tour and just appreciate the ground. We're there to see a football game, and of course that's going to influence how we judge them. So yeah, you're right. Atmosphere, I'll give it a 6, and I've got a feeling I'll be giving a few more 6s in this episode.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think you're being quite generous. The only bit of atmosphere I remember from the game, I don't know if you remember it, Danny Hilton got sent off late on for a challenge on, I think it was Ian Henderson.
Sounds about right.
I think it was on Ian Henderson. He used to play for Luton about 10, 12 years ago. It wasn't great for us. And I remember when he came to the sideline after, he was getting loads of stick and did a couple of times during the game. But from the home crowd, I can't really remember much in terms of brilliant atmosphere. There were a few oohs and ahs. They dominated the game and had plenty of efforts, but it wasn't great. And as you said, it was largely empty. So how can I give atmosphere a good rating? I don't think I can go above 5, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll lower that to 5 as well then. I think 6 is probably average, and yeah, you'd probably say at that kind of not even half full, that's not an average atmosphere, that's a below par atmosphere. So yeah, okay, you've convinced me to give a 5.
Then we move on to location, which for me is arguably where it gets lower, because we talk about key areas, don't we? We talk about it being good links to public transport, which the train station was a 40-minute walk away. It was a horrible walk. It was winter, which I appreciate made it worse. I just remember walking down loads of streets of shops that were largely shut and boarded up. Obviously, economically, the world wasn't, or the UK isn't a great place, but it was just put a bit of a downer on things, didn't it? It wasn't vibrant at any stage.
I'm hesitant to judge places that look on the face of it quite run down and deprived, because even though Luton is in the south where you think more prosperous, I do think our town has similarities with places in the north, like a Rochdale, and I can appreciate the hardship some of these towns go through. But yeah, it wasn't the prettiest walk, and it was quite long. And you're saying 40 minutes. It's more than you expect to walk to get to a football ground. Yeah. It's a shame it's not nearer to the train station and the town centre, but there we have it. And do we bring out another 5? I've never been this harsh marking a ground before.
Well, this was sort of the issue I had beforehand, is I was looking at my Cambridge score and thinking, do I want it to get worse? But then I looked at the two experiences as a whole, and you could argue it's probably not better. I don't know. I probably like the inside of the ground a bit more, but other than that, I don't know that it was a better experience.
No, there are similarities, aren't there? Well,
definitely in location.
Cambridge, you're walking through a field. In Rochdale, you're walking through quite a deprived area of the town. So it's just kind of swings and roundabouts, but yeah, it's a bit of regardless, it's a longer walk than you expect to have to do. So yes, unfortunately, I will be sticking with another 5.
Unfortunately, I have to do the same, because I don't see how I can give it higher, because I'm sure I'd love to get the views of other away fans that have been to Rochdale who maybe know a few tricks that we didn't, or even if you just went in summer. But for us, it was I
wonder if we didn't take the easiest route, or if there's just like a straightforward bus that goes direct almost outside the ground, and you just think maybe we were idiots and didn't plan that's quite possible, because we don't really plan the route, do we, very well. We just kind of get there and then I go on Google Maps, because your phone's hopeless, so I have to get us there, and we make it there by just on foot. But yeah, maybe there was a straightforward way of getting there, and we just didn't know it.
Unfortunately, though, we now have to move on to value. And I feel like for the first 2, you've been trying your best to find something optimistic and to be a bit more positive and sympathetic with Rochdale. So when I tell you to remind you that these tickets were £22, I'm not quite sure what you're going to do.
Remind me what league we're talking about here?
League One.
League One, okay. That saves it slightly, but still, yeah, 22. You can see, if that's what the home fans have to pay, you can see why not many bother turning up.
Yes. Obviously, we don't know if there's a huge discount on season tickets, because a lot of clubs in the north, I think Bradford are one, they try and do a really cheap season ticket and more expensive match prices, tempt more people into season tickets. But it didn't look like that from the face of it.
No. And even if they do that, they normally do count that in the attendance, don't they? Yeah. And if you're saying it was only 3,000, then there's not that many season tickets. So yeah, if that is the going price for a match day ticket, then yeah, I don't know. You just wonder what they're thinking. That might put fans off. And you're in an area that has got 2 huge European giants. Yeah. You're just asking to lose support, aren't you? I don't know what's the answer? I mean, I'm not saying I know better than the executives, whatever they have at Rochdale, but something's not on, is it? £22.
I mean, when you're comparing, probably for midweek games around the same time, Manchester City, and I know they have problems with it, and we're not talking about them being financially sustainable, but their Champions League games at times are cheaper than that.
Really? They do 20 quid games, do they, for the Champions League? And if they do that for the Champions League, I bet they do the League Cup games. Well, I know Arsenal do about £10-15 for League Cup games. So, yeah. So they are between a rock and a hard place, aren't they? You want to try and get fans in and make some money because these clubs are struggling, and they'll be struggling even more now post-pandemic. But you've put enough people going to games, and that's just sad. But that's another debate, I guess. So we have to rate it. I'm just a parrot going again, 5 all the way.
I mean, I almost thought about giving a 4, but then when I compare it to last week with QPR, which is one league up, 2 bottom half teams, and nearly a 10 or more, I don't think we can go quite that high. But I think 5 is generous, I would say. So I'm going to give it a 5, but admit that I'm being quite generous at the same time. Albeit, the saving grace at the time is they were playing good football under Keith Hill, who's obviously now gone to Bolton and been sacked. But 22 quid for that is inexcusable, and the game didn't help yet again.
Not at all. But did we see ex-Luton legend Calvin Andrew play?
We did. He came on, yeah, late on. He came on after the red card to try and boost a late winner, but he didn't manage that, I'm afraid. And you used the word legend very lightly, I presume. We move on to the final one, which is character. So probably the only one where I won't give it a 5, if I'm being honest, because I quite like the ground. It's one of those that we repeat ourselves a lot of the time here, but it's an old school ground. And as we've proven, that's the oldest one that we've had so far.
Yeah.
It's got 4 corners, which you can very much see out of. Unfortunately, it's in the middle of nowhere, so you can't see much behind it. But I actually did like the stadium. It's quite smart. Obviously, it had a little bit of renovation for the Rugby League World Cup and the other events like that. But I thought it was quite nice once I was in there. So I'll definitely give this one higher than a 5.
Yeah. I didn't hate the ground, and I feel like I need to make up for the negative scores I've given it prior to this. So yeah, I will be compensating a bit. Mm-hmm. And I remember quite a weird thing to remember. I remember the music playlist before the game was quite good. Especially in Manchester. I think you had some of the big Manchester bands, obviously Oasis and the like. Yeah. Good music, and I'll give that in their favour. So I can't go too high. I can't say I love the ground, and I wouldn't be in a rush to do it again. Yeah. But I'll give it slightly higher, and I'll give it a 6, I think, for character.
So I'm going to be slightly more generous, but I think on character across the board in this series, I've probably on average been a mark more generous than you. I am going to give it a 7 because most of the ones that I've liked or really liked, I've given an 8, and the ones that have been unique or special, I've given a 9 or 10. For this one, I think I really like the stadium. It didn't, to our knowledge, and again, after the 40-minute walk, we didn't really look around in great detail, but it didn't have any extremely unique, oh my word, you must go back there and watch some features. But the layout was smart. It was a great vantage point to watch football, albeit that the stadium, the match itself was terrible. And I would happily go back there again. And particularly after this, if I could find a bus that got there, I think I would say it's a pretty good or average match experience.
I think average is the right word to use. And I will say, I think I mentioned this in the Crew Alexandra one as well. To be an away fan, but to sit in one of the longer stands,
halfway line, yeah, it's unique.
Halfway line, you obviously get a good view of both halves, which is something you're not used to. Normally, your team are either shooting towards you one half, and then all the action could be at the other end in the second half, and you're left feeling quite distant. You can't, what's happening over there? So to be given as an away fan that stand, I will give them that. I think that's a good thing. To give a good view to the away support.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's probably a balance of the negatives for the other side, which is they haven't got the home support to fill one of the stands to the side of the pitch. But it was good nonetheless. So I'm going to give it a 7, be slightly more generous. I think that leaves it 1 behind my score for Cambridge, which I'm a little disappointed about. But again, it's only because of the location factors, really.
Yeah, I left feeling quite guilty about the low score. I've given Spotland here because I want to stress, I did not hate the ground at all. It was just a very forgettable day, really.
Yeah, and I'm sure if we'd seen a thriller, it potentially would have been slightly higher. But that's all for this episode. If you did enjoy it, please do put a thumbs up on the video. Let us know what you think if you've been to Spotland as an away fan, or if you've seen a more exciting game. And if you're a home fan, firstly, apologies. And secondly, let us know what you think of the season ticket prices and if that's any different. Subscribe to the channel for a new episode from this one every week. Thank you to my co-host Tom for joining me as always.
Cheers.
And hopefully we'll see you next time.